So let me introduce you. President of PAL, right? Correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, and Elva Mai Hoover, is that correct how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're talking to Elva Mai Hoover, the president of PAL, and an actress for, what, how many years now? 40?
Oh, more than that.
45? More than that, 50?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that gets me to see where I go to my correct formula, which is, where were you born?
I was born in Scotland.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What part of Scotland? Scotland's big.
Dumbarton.
Oh, really? Small town?
It's a suburb of Glasgow.
Okay.
Now it's kind of like literally, it was a village, I think, when I was born, but now it's just
So,
a suburb of Glasgow.
So do you consider yourself a Glaswegian?
No, no, because I came here when I was probably 18 months old.
Oh, okay.
That's where I was born.
Okay, and Scottish parents?
No, Scottish mother, Canadian father.
All right. Well, far back can you go on now? So Canadian father, and then when you say you came at 18?
No,
Oh,
18 months.
18 months.
Yeah.
To where? To Toronto, Montreal? Or?
No, originally to Selkirk, Ontario,
Okay.
which is Niagara Peninsula way, which is where my father's family
Okay.
have come from.
Right.
Yeah.
So you were brought up in Selkirk?
Nope. No, it's a very complicated family history.
Well, perhaps why don't, instead of me asking the questions, you just tell it in your own fashion.
Yeah. My mother was a war bride. My father, sadly, was alcoholic. She came to join him after the war in Canada. Things were a bit of a mess. We ended up leaving him when I was 7. My mother ran away, and we came to Toronto.
What part of Toronto would that be?
Initially, it was the West End. It was kind of Lansdowne Bloor.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at a high school there, or
Well, I dropped out of high school really early. So.
which high school did you drop out of?
The high school I dropped out of, I mean, every year we would move,
Oh, okay.
right? Because the rent would go up.
Okay.
And my mother was a single parent in a time that was not fabulous for women to be single parents. There wasn't much support or sympathy for that. And anyway, so she had to work very hard to keep body and soul together for the two of us. And
But you did end up at the National Theatre School, so somewhere between dropping out of high school and getting to National
very
Theatre
close, actually, because I dropped out of high school when I was 15. I got a work permit, and I worked at the Bell Telephone. And it was an economic decision to drop out of school because my mother could no longer afford to support me. But my big goal in life was to go back to school. And I read about the National Theatre School, which had been in existence for a year at that time.
Right,
And
it was new, right?
yeah, it was very new, and they said that if you auditioned for this thing and you were accepted, that they would help you find the money.
Sort of scholarship.
Yeah, to go to school.
Okay.
And
So where did you actually do the audition? Did you go to Montreal?
no, in Toronto,
You
at
did?
Hart House.
With Robert Gill?
No, they came here. Jean Gaston and Powers Thomas, who were the men who ran the theatre school at the time. They do, and they still do to this day. They do a national tour, and you go and audition in the city that you live in, and then they make their decisions about who to accept, and once you're accepted, then of course you go to Montreal.
So I can't imagine you could walk into an interview for the National Theatre School and not have some experience.
I had none at all. Absolutely none. I had never seen a play.
So what was your piece?
Well, they sent you a selection of things that you could audition for, a selection of classical pieces and a selection of non-classical pieces. I wouldn't say contemporary because they weren't that contemporary, but they weren't classical. So I read them, and I was always a great reader. I loved to read. So I read them, and I decided that I would do Juliet, of course, and I would do Joan of Arc, The Lark by Jean-Henri. So I didn't even know that you were meant to rehearse out loud. That's how little I knew about acting.
Just about when you see?
Yes, for Juliet, yeah. No, it was actually, no, it wasn't, it was Gallop Pace.
Okay.
It's just before the balcony scene.
Okay.
But I didn't know that you actually rehearsed out loud, and so I would sit there doing this. So the first time I said my pieces out loud was the day I auditioned. So I went.
But you got the audition. That said you passed the audition.
No, but it wasn't that straightforward. They really liked me. They could see that I was green as grass, and I was also way too young. I was only 15, and you can't go to the theater school until you're 17. So I was, encouraged, and I was told by Powers at that time to make a promise not to take acting classes and not to do amateur theater. That was the promise that I made to him. And to come back the following year and audition again. So I said, well, what do I do in the meantime? He said, you just read. And you go and you see things, but you don't.
And what was to see in that time in Toronto?
Well, I mean, there wasn't that much, and I couldn't afford it anyway. It was
Yeah.
a press theater. But movies, I certainly saw movies. And I read a lot, and I read a lot of plays, and, met a few people. And I did actually go to acting classes, which was a really bad idea, because I was a very introverted person.
That's why you said not to.
No, I said I wouldn't, and then I did. But I ended up going to Eli Rill, who was doing acting classes at the time, and he was method, and it was like totally wrong. I should have been being brought out of myself, and instead I was being asked to, look into myself and go very deep and all of this stuff, and it was sort of self-conscious making and weird.
To do though, and you said you watched the movies, you must have had something in mind. Now, if not Bette Davis, I mean, what would you see that you would say that that's what I can do, or that's what I would like to be?
I don't think of it. I thought of it that way.
Not that way at all?
No. I mean, were there actors that I liked? Yeah. But probably I watched television. An actor that I really liked was Polly Bergen,
Okay.
who at the time was doing things like the Helen Morgan story
Right.
on Playhouse 90 and things like that. I watched a lot of
Live theater on CBC.
TV. Yeah.
On CBC.
Well, not CBC. It wouldn't have been CBC. It would have been an American channel. CBC
Okay,
didn't
NBC.
show. Yeah, probably.
And you see
Yeah.
one of those playhouses, whatever they had, or
Playhouse
CBS,
90
Playhouse
and-
90. Yeah, which was basically live TV,
Yeah, a lot of it.
live by your parents' TV.
Exactly. But it was well done. It was incredibly well done.
So to skip that, you did get accepted, and you
Yeah.
did attend in Montreal,
Yeah.
and you did graduate,
Yeah.
and then you went to.
Then I joined the last season of Canadian Players. I was offered 3 different opportunities, and I took that one. And it was a sort of bus and truck tour of, I did Playboy of the Western World with Martha Henry and Dougie Rain, playing one of the girls in the village. And then I did a bus and truck tour of Murder in the Cathedral all over Ontario.
Okay. Was Stratford an option?
Later it was. I didn't stick around, I went to England.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. I do notice on your
Yeah.
Wikipedia, you did end up in England.
Yeah.
And you ended up in England in the mid-60s.
Yeah.
Great time to be in England.
Yeah.
1966,
Yeah.
Carnegie Street,
Yeah.
Twiggy,
Yeah.
miniskirts,
All of that.
pretty Canadian girl,
Yeah. All of that.
running the streets of London.
Well, I was actually with somebody. I mean, I was with the man who became my.
But it was a great time.
Husband.
I was actually there at 66.
Were you? Yeah.
And also, the last time they were winning the World Cup was
Yeah.
1966.
That would
That I
not.
remember.
Yeah. That would not have meant much to me, but.
Only because I was in a pub when they won. They beat the Germans and they were like,
Very
tearing the
bizarre.
place apart, right?
Yeah.
They just beat the Germans so much.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was a great time because that was swinging London.
Yeah.
You know, it really was.
Absolutely. And I
It was
used to
before
work.
the hippies. It was really that sort of magical period.
Yeah.
With the,
Well,
after,
no, it was the hippies.
but the hippies started to come into it but it was that pop, that early pop, British pop, we led to Carnaby Street, we led to Maud.
Yeah.
That wasn't hippies, it was
Mary
Maud.
Quant and,
Mary Quant and Twiggy,
yeah,
and Houndstooth,
yeah,
and bell bottoms,
yeah,
and flowered shirts.
and beautiful.
And men could dress like peacocks.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, one of the few times in history where men could really just dress up like a dandy
Right.
peacock and get away with it.
Yeah.
I loved it, I loved it. Great time. Anyway, so yes, you were in that period, and were you actually working then, or?
Not that much.
Or studying, or-
I actually, because I had a Canadian accent, it wasn't easy at that time to get much work as a Canadian.
Right.
And I never, my ex-husband was somebody who was extremely facile at accents, and he was an Australian who lived in Canada, who ended up in England. So, you know, people would know him as that Australian actor, or that Canadian actor, or that British
Right.
actor, because he would walk into an interview and just turn on an accent. And that was not ever
It's a gift.
my style. I was definitely Canadian, and so I did some theater work. I did a season of Neil Simon, you know, things like that. I did a lot of dubbing with a very interesting new dubbing method, developed by a man called Robert Riety, which was sort of the labial system of dubbing. Up
Okay.
until then, it hadn't really existed.
Because you have done a lot of voice work
Yeah, yeah,
throughout your career,
yeah.
which we can get
So-
to at a later point.
Yeah.
So you had an interest in that and doing that.
Well, I was good at it,
Okay.
and so I did a lot of that. But I also worked at a place called Scripts Limited, which was really interesting because I was a very good typist. I'd sort of developed this along the way, the ability to touch type very,
Which is the
very
cliche,
quickly.
can you type? You might
But
be pretty, but
I
can you type?
could, but I could. And so I worked at this place called Scripts Limited, where writers would bring their scripts, and honest to God, half the time they were like handwritten or whatever.
Illegible.
Yeah. So I had some really nice things that came out of that. Like I went for a week to Paris, and I worked for Orson Welles on Mask of the Red Death.
Okay.
Yeah. Sort of while he was working on the script, so I was, you know, typing up all the pages and stuff.
Well, now you just hit a nerve with me. You gotta tell me an anecdote, you gotta tell me something.
About Orson Welles?
Of course.
Oh, it was all very top
My God, my God.
secret. It was incredibly top secret. He was just sort of in his
Obese age,
obese years.
about 300 pounds.
Yeah, and he was wearing big black
Cap
capes
and-
and
Yeah.
wide, all in black with big wide brimmed hats and stuff. And the whole thing, the reason that he brought a typist from London was because he didn't want anybody in the film community to know what he was working on.
So you wanted basically someone no one would know.
Yeah, exactly.
But you really wouldn't know too much about it anyway.
Exactly.
Just come and do a job.
And yeah, precisely, and who would
Okay.
just
That's fascinating.
type for him, right?
A cinema god, a cinema god.
But it was really interesting. It was like foreign intrigue because I was staying at a little boutique hotel on the Faubourg Saint-Honoré, which is very nice, but the phone would ring and it was sort of meet me at, and I would take a cab and I would meet him and he would pass me pages. And then I'd go back and I'd type them all up and then I'd let him know they were done. And they gave me,
You're probably trying to hide from debt collectors.
who knows? Who knows? But and then sometimes there was a woman who turned up who I'm sure was Francois d'Orléac, because just like I know what she looks like,
Right.
and she was, you know, a real beauty dressed in brown suede from head to toe. So she sometimes would turn up. Sometimes it was Orson. It was really, really interesting because they had given me. Do you remember the Olive Betty? The slimline type,
Yes.
the slimline typewriter
Yes.
in light blue and dark blue. It looked like a
Very
racing
smart.
car. It
Yeah,
was beautiful.
Beautiful, yeah.
And
I didn't have one, but I know.
yeah, I'd never seen anything like it.
Pretty
But
nice.
yeah, they gave it to me to take to Paris. So I spent the week, you know, and when I came back home, when I came back to London, his assistant in London, a British woman, said to me, we were sort of settling up money and stuff, and she said, how was it? How did you enjoy yourself? And I said, it was wonderful. I had a great time. I said, I really liked that typewriter. It was just, it was so easy to work on. It was so nice and everything. She said, oh, you can keep it. So for a long time I did have it. And they gave me tickets to the opening of Chimes at Midnight. So,
I was going to say, it sounds like it's around the same time
Yeah.
as Chimes at Midnight,
Yeah.
which is one of his great films.
Yeah, exactly.
Or one of his great parts. Some people consider one of the great Shakespeare films of all time, which is in Falstaff.
Yeah,
I've watched the film endlessly. I've got it on my TV. I mean, that's anyway.
there you go.
There you go.
Anyway, it was fun.
You end up not staying in London and coming back to Canada.
Yeah, I was there for 3.5 years. I got married there. I had a baby there. And I wasn't working, and I was getting calls from Canada saying, when are you coming home? People obviously wanted to work with me. So we decided to come back. I wasn't really that keen on coming home. I liked England a lot. And I had worked so hard all through my teen years. I mean, I always had 2, 3 jobs. So England was kind of relaxing for me, not to be going to school, doing 10-hour days and then working part-time.
So grinding all the time.
Yeah,
A
exactly.
bit more freedom.
Yeah, it was kind of nice.
Also, England's a lot more liberal than Canada. By and large, the British are much more relaxed about things.
Yeah, I just liked it. It suited me. I
Plus,
really
London
liked
was the
it.
greatest city in the world.
Yeah,
It was, anyway,
yeah,
at that time.
yeah. No,
Before
it
then,
was lovely.
it was lovely. Okay, so back in Canada, back in Toronto,
Yeah,
can we date this at 69, 70?
probably
Probably
somewhere
around
around there. Yeah,
Hippie time in Toronto?
yeah.
Yorkville?
I didn't have anything to do with me. By this time I was married. I had a baby.
So what was your
I was working
what was your
again,
life like
Non-stop
in the early
working.
70s?
non-stop working.
And
I
no
did
daycare,
theater. Hmm?
No daycare? Or was it?
No,
No daycare?
my daughter went everywhere with us. We literally lived out of a trunk. And we did theater in the days that, years later, I don't know if you know, but Canadian Actors Equity was American Equity during
Right.
those years.
Okay.
It didn't become Canadian Equity until I think 75.
Fine.
So there was a point at which later on we found out that we were eligible for an American pension if you had worked a certain amount.
During that time?
Yeah, and I worked nonstop. And when we went back, and you had to find your contracts. And there were years that I worked, 42 weeks in the theater, all over the country.
Well, this is what it excites me to ask you about, because you must have been part of the extraordinary explosion of Canadian theater
Yeah,
in the 70s.
yeah, for
I just
sure.
want to run off a few things too, because I'm sure they'll ring a bell somewhere. Theater Passmarais, Tarragon.
Yeah, but I wasn't involved in any of that. I was out of town.
Let me finish.
Yeah,
Phoenix Theater, Toronto Free Theater,
yeah.
Factory Lab Theater.
I worked at Toronto Free.
What I'm saying to you is that was all happening, parallel out across the country in places like Montreal and Vancouver, but specifically because I was in Toronto, it was happening all around us in Toronto.
Right.
And you say you weren't part of any of
No,
that?
because I was always working out of town.
Out of town?
I did like a whole year at Theatre Calgary with Christopher Newton, from September until May. Like a whole year of
And living where?
In Calgary.
In Calgary, renting a
Yeah.
house
Yeah, in an apartment.
in an apartment.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, these were the days of very long contracts. And if you were working out of town, that's what you did. So you weren't kind of like maintaining a residence in Toronto.
Right.
You lived out of town and then you came back to Toronto, probably lived in an apartment hotel until your next contract, which in my case would be like 6 weeks later or something.
I was just wondering if you would share the stage with people like Jackie Burroughs,
I worked with Jackie on Road to Avonlea.
which was a series.
Yeah,
But not on stage,
not on stage, no,
when she did Laura Walks.
no,
You don't know that one?
no.
Okay, well, I won't put down that route, because it's very funny.
No, I worked at Toronto Free with Martin Kinch.
Right.
I did a play that he wrote called April 21st, 1975 about a car crash.
Okay.
I worked.
So you did some work?
I worked with Tom Hendry. I worked with Marion Andre at Theatre Plus.
Okay.
I did a whole year at what was then the St. Lawrence Center Theatre Company with Leon Major and Kurt Reese.
Okay, there you are.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you probe a little bit,
Yeah.
it is there.
Yeah, oh, for sure. No, I know I worked nonstop in theater, but I didn't do alternative theater.
Yeah. Okay, no, and it was that.
Except for Toronto Free.
Yeah, yeah, and to be fair is what I and some of my colleagues were doing was fringe before there was fringe.
Yeah.
It was like fringe beyond fringe, sort of pop-up fringe, but
Yeah.
it was there.
Yeah.
It was there in Toronto, but I know what you're talking about. And but what I was kind of interested in, you were part of like extraordinary theater. I mean, there's history is written about that period.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because up until then, it was all European and British theater, and
Yeah,
then suddenly
and I
it was
did- and I-
explosion of Canadian.
but I was
David
still-
French
but I-
coming home.
Well, David French was a pal of mine, but I did,
George Walker.
unquestionably, I was doing a lot
Earl Bolt.
of the American and English.
Still the traditional American
Absolutely.
English. So you
Yeah.
weren't participating in like the coming homes and the
No.
airports and that sort of stuff.
No.
Okay. All right. Well, but you were part doing television.
Yeah,
Yes. So let's move to there because my interest in is you were doing a thing called research.
oh yeah, I mean, I barely remember
Well,
that
that's-
stuff, that's ancient history.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that there is a history there too.
Yeah.
That was one of the first CTV television series.
Right,
With Larry Mann.
yeah,
You did an episode.
yeah, Littlest Hobo, I did 3 Littlest Hobos.
King of Kensington.
Yeah, King of Kensington, I did several, I did a couple.
And-
In those days, you could do more than one and you weren't the same character.
And the one I love the most is Superman 2.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me a little bit of Superman 2.
Um,
Who did you work with and where was it shot? Where
we
did you
shot
shoot it?
Niagara Falls.
Okay.
The scene that I was in was, I don't even remember the guy's name. We were a couple, we were the parents of the kid who falls over the falls.
Right, and
That Superman saves.
Clark
right?
Kent has to go off and do his
Yeah.
thing and come, and Margot Kidder's there, so you,
Oh, no, I met Margot Kidder and
Yeah.
she had just recently married John Hurd.
okay.
Not, I think, a happy union. I think it was kind of impulsive, and they ended up, and he wasn't working, and she was, of course,
Bipolar.
well, but she was a star. I mean, she was a star.
For-
And John Hurd was a wonderful actor, but he wasn't working, and he
Okay, I
was
see.
acting out a lot.
all right.
Yeah, it was fun.
Did you meet Christopher Reeves?
Of course, because he was in the,
Well, don't tell me.
yeah, well, I mean, what's to tell, you
Well,
know, he
you-
was,
What, did you trip over his shoes or did he offer to pick you up or
no, I mean.
did he hit on you?
No, not at all, not at all. It certainly was in the days, because it was Superman 2, so he'd done the first one, so he was a big star. And I know at lunch hours, they would have people lining up and he would sign autographs and stuff. you
Well,
know.
apparently he was very accessible, wasn't he?
Yeah. he
People
was-
really liked this
Yeah,
guy.
he was a nice guy.
He was a nice guy.
Yeah.
We're very happy with the accident. and all
Oh,
that
it's
stuff.
horrible. Just horrible.
I know the original Superman movie is really, fought well off.
Yeah.
It's
It's
still.
interesting because the guy who played the kid, Hadley Kay, is still working a lot, and he's a voice actor mainly. And he was in touch with me recently because he just went to, I think, Detroit to do one of those conferences, one of the,
Comic-Con?
Yeah.
So, yeah, but he was actually
Yeah,
in Superman.
yeah,
He was a
yeah,
kid who fell
yeah.
over the falls, right?
so he said to me, so I told them, that you were still around and kicking and stuff, and he said, so they said,
My
well,
mother's still around.
yeah, exactly, so they said, well, maybe the next time the two of you
They
could
could show
come.
up. Papa, why not?
Which was funny, yeah.
Oh, they're a very pop favorite for that.
Yeah.
But it was actually on location in Niagara
Niagara
Falls.
Falls, yeah.
What, about a day or so? Or
No, we
two-
were there
just
for a week, actually, well, I think,
On the Canadian side?
yeah,
On the Canadian
Yeah.
side. Yeah, which I know that stretch along there.
exactly, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so then, Little Hobo, And something which, I mean, you must be proud of, and you got the Genie nomination, not with the Genie in those days, what was it?
It was
Genie Award?
Genie.
Was it Genie? Yeah, it was the early days of the Genies, which is a Terry Fox story.
Yeah,
You
and
got to
Jackie
play-
won.
You got to play a Canadian icon.
Yeah.
You become a Canadian icon. I'm not so sure she was in 1983, maybe she was at that time.
Well, the whole
But
story.
now, of course, she is.
Yeah, but the whole
But you
story.
got to play, let me finish the introduction.
Yeah,
For those who don't know,
Right.
our guest played Betty Fox in
Yeah.
the Terry Fox story. So tell me a little bit about that.
well, I can tell you a couple of things. I can tell you that the movie was made so quickly after Terry's death. Robert Cooper, who went on to become the head of HBO, my understanding is that he went to visit Terry Fox as Terry was dying, and he got Terry to sign the rights for him to make this docudrama about Terry.
For the movie rights.
Yeah, and I don't think that his family was happy about it. I think they felt that he had been taken advantage of.
Well, that's the story I've heard.
Yeah. And Ralph Thomas, who was an incredible director,
For the records. you
Yeah.
see.
directed it. But it was all too quick. And the interesting thing is that, and Robert Duvall was in the movie playing, I can't remember the character's name, Phil somebody?
He was hired on to basically straighten out and get the press straightened out and
Yeah, he was.
make it more professional instead of just an actor.
Yeah, exactly. So he was actually, I think he was employed by the Cancer Society,
Okay,
the character.
right.
So that was great. It was really neat. And it was wonderful to watch Robert working
I have
with.
seen the movie, by the way.
Have you? Yeah. It was wonderful to watch Robert working with Eric Fryer, who was the
Like Terry.
young man who played Terry, who was an amputee. And Robert was wonderful because he really worked with him on camera and really sort of, he would do unexpected things which would get very natural reactions out of Eric, because
Right.
Eric was not an actor. And so anything good about that performance probably comes from Robert's participation.
Plus, he's a big name by then. Well, The Godfather had already been around, so I mean, developed
Yeah.
was a name.
Yeah,
Which is a
no,
bit of a coup for
yeah, he was great
Cooper.
to work with, yeah.
Which shows how much Cooper could pull the strings, actually.
But the interesting thing is, the movie played here and went nowhere. Like, nobody came. It was too
Oh.
soon. No, it was too soon.
No, I think I did.
Well, maybe you did, but very few people did.
I know that.
And people resented the movie because it was all too soon. However, that movie won the first cable awards in the United States.
I know all this.
Yeah.
I'm a Canadian film historian,
Yeah.
and I've written about this.
Yeah.
This is my turf.
But it's fabulous. I mean, it's so interesting to me.
The movie, despite what you said, and I mean, I don't want to get into all that, because what you said is exactly true. That's the story that Cooper did.
Yeah.
But Cooper was not well liked. So, people telling, the backstabbing in the Canadian film industry is quite extraordinary and beyond belief. But anyway, the point being is that on an objective way, the movie turned out okay. It has some good performances, including you as Betty, and as you're right, Robert Duvall, and it has gone on to be part of the whole mythology
Well, do
of
you know
Terry
who it was
Fox.
supposed to?
So no one's going to dump on it now, 30 years later. They're just going to say it's just part of what it is.
Yeah.
At the time, you're right, it was way too soon. And was Robert Cooper an opportunist? It's a Pope Catholic, it's
Yeah,
just like,
exactly.
you gotta nail the guy for being what he is.
Do you know who was supposed to play Betty?
You can't throw people in jail for being jerks,
No.
unfortunately.
The whole world would
Would
be.
be
You know who was supposed to play Betty?
No.
Piper Laurie.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and then,
Well, don't downplay the fact that you did get a nomination for that part.
I'm not downplaying it. No,
And there was
but,
another one around the same time called Annie's Story.
oh yeah, that was fun.
Well, let's talk about
That I
that.
really enjoyed doing.
And for those who don't know, it was made for CBC, wasn't it?
Yeah,
It was, Graham Parker was the
Yeah.
director. Small story.
it was a great story. It
I mean,
was-
small story in terms of, it's not a big, like Terry Fox is like, you're not running across the, it was.
Yeah. But
It was a drama.
But it was a really,
Well, tell me a bit about it.
it was a young woman who wanted to be a country and western singer, and I played her mother. And it was fun for me because I don't usually get cast like that. Her mother was alcoholic and kind of negligent and not a great mom. And she was abused by her uncle. And it was sort of, you know, one of those awful family secrets.
But this is 1984, so
it's
still
very early,
very early in the game.
doing something like
This
that.
is not 2004, this is 1984.
Absolutely. So it was a pretty intense drama, but it also had this redeeming feature of country and western music and small town fairs in Canada. You know, it was, and Brent Carver was in it, which was great. It was one of Brent's first things, and he was lovely.
And it was well directed.
It was well directed.
Well
I
received.
really liked working with Graham.
The review in Cinema Canada, which I dug up, and it was, you know. Now, actor nominee, best actress in the leading role.
Yeah,
Not so bad.
yeah, and that was the same year,
You must be chuffed.
1984.
I was gonna say, weren't you 10 years, 12 years into the business professionally? I mean,
Yeah.
Weren't you thinking that you might have actually got something going here?
No, I wasn't ambitious. I've never been a very ambitious person.
So, want to explain that a bit? Because there's something about this is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, there is a dictum that stars have a short, bright life.
Right.
The shelf life is short.
Yeah,
Character actors can go forever.
yeah, well, I'm still going.
Well, that, and I didn't want to, but that
Yeah.
seemed logical to me. By the age of 40, you are playing mothers. Not only mothers in Terry Fox and mothers in Superman.
I wasn't 40.
But mothers in Edison Twins.
Yeah.
You were playing mothers.
Yeah.
And two sons who were probably
Oh, yes, I mean, there was an era,
8 years younger than you.
actually where my demo, I thought, could easily have been called Mothers of Fucked Up Sons. Because that was kind of my hit. I was always, if there was a child molester who needed a mother, it was me. If there was a drug addict who overdosed and almost died, like in Queer as Folk, call Elva, right? It just, yeah. Interesting, because I never had a son, but I was definitely the mother of screwed up sons.
And let me just move on quickly because there are some others I just want to touch base on here. You mentioned the Edison Twins where you played Mrs. Edison.
Yeah.
And how old was your son in that one?
Andrew?
Because it's on,
Well, the
it's on
twins.
YouTube, you know, you can find the Edison Twins.
Yeah, I know.
All the episodes are
A lot of
there.
people like it.
And this is 1984.
Yeah.
And, you know, you look great.
Yeah. I was a little
My mother looked like that. I'd be like, wow. But it's not really played on. You're just a mom to these obnoxious kids.
Well, they were twins,
Yeah,
right?
twins, yeah.
Marnie and Andrew.
A boy and a girl.
Yeah. Well, Marnie and Andrew were the actors. I can't remember what the kids' names were on the
Right.
series. But anyway, I think they were at the time probably 17-ish. But they looked
so
younger. They probably read more like 14 or 15.
It was an odd show. I came out of Novana though.
Well, it was one of the first live action
Yeah.
series out of Nelvana. I mean, I spent a lot of time working with animals on that show. I worked with a python, I worked with an elephant, I worked with orangutan that shit all over me. And I remember the trainer saying, I was wearing a light beige trench coat, and I was holding this animal, and it shit all down mine. And I went, and he said, well, you know what it is? I said, no, if you want to explain, I'm happy to hear. He said, the kids make him really uptight. And when you hold him, you're so calm that he just lets go.
Maybe you should have been a more.
I should have been an animal handler, maybe. Maybe I missed a career.
Of a whisperer, and of course famously wrote to Avonlea.
Yeah.
And how many have what? They say what, 39 episodes?
I guess so,
That's
yeah.
how much, what,
Well, I
about
think it was
5
over
years?
4 seasons.
4 seasons.
Yeah.
One of the most famous shows in the Canadian, I mean, my daughters watch that religiously.
Well, even now, if I do theatre out of town, there's, particularly like in small town Ontario, there's always some, they get older obviously as time goes on. Now they're probably, I'm trying to think, I was shooting that Christmas movie in Innisfil, and I needed to change rooms, and the days were really, really long, and this young woman said to me, oh, anytime that you come home, just let me know, and I'll help you, like a young woman working in the hotel. She was so sweet, she did everything. And I said, this is so nice of you. She said, I got so excited when I saw your name, because I remember you from Avonlea, and my mom and I used to watch that show every Sunday night. I mean, it was the days when it was appointment TV,
Absolutely.
right? And you watched as a family.
Yeah.
And so there's a whole generation of
Absolutely.
women, and I think she's probably now in her mid-30s. But she's never, and I was not the lead. I was a running character, but I certainly wasn't a lead. But they remember you.
Pippi Longstocking, which is another Novana production.
Yeah.
Which is a fabulous Swedish, I mean, it's not big and huge in Canada.
Right.
But those guys in Novana love Pippi Longstocking.
Yeah.
And you get to do a voice there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And again, what, the mother?
Probably. No, or an eccentric neighbor, maybe.
And then we go through Murdoch Mysteries, Flashpoint, Rookie, which one haven't you done? Well, there's a lot out there, but I mean, if you look at Murdoch Mysteries, Flashpoint, and Rookie Blue,
yeah.
I mean, there's a lot there. And leading into something which you've got to tell me something about is Handmaid's Tale.
Oh, yeah.
Please tell me
Well, that was
something.
pretty recently.
Yes, this whole thing is huge.
Yeah.
It's huge again. Remember that was written back in the 80s and there was already the movie done and then suddenly, bang.
And isn't it a brilliant looking show?
Well, the whole thing is brilliant. But
Yeah.
tell me about I mean, did you have, what was it? Where
It
did
was
you
a
shoot
small
it?
part. I played a social worker.
And shot here in Toronto?
Yeah, in the 3rd season. And I was in the last 2 episodes of the 3rd season when Yvonne, again the actor's name, not the character, has come to Canada to visit the baby,
Okay.
right? And so she's being monitored very carefully by the Canadian authorities. And I'm the one who gives her the baby and has to sit there, timing her interactions and, telling her that she has to be, not to say that she's mommy to the baby because that's confusing to the child,
That's the
etc.
rules.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's an amazing looking show. I mean, when I see it, like the cinematography is fantastic.
Well, they put a lot of money into it.
Mm-hmm.
They put a lot of money into it. But what I'm really pleased about the whole thing, and this is a bit of sidetrack, is this a success of Margaret Atwood?
Yeah,
Not that she wasn't successful right from the start, which she was.
yeah,
But to continue and build and build and build.
yeah.
And that woman does not
Well, and somebody made the point the other day.
blink. She does not shy away from just being who she is.
Exactly.
Her hubby dies, middle book tour.
Yeah.
Do you think she missed a beat? Do you think she friggin' missed a beat? The next night she's on Jimmy Kimmel,
Yeah.
And then she's on the Booker. I mean, it's just like, where do you stop? Where do you stop
somebody made
giving
the
her
point
stuff?
that she, was nominated for the Booker, and she split it with this other writer that I'm not familiar with.
A woman of color.
Yeah,
It's a
which
real
is great.
political- Yeah, I mean, the jury did it.
But she was not nominated for any Canadian prizes
Yeah.
for the
I
testimonies.
know, because they've had enough of her. They're just like, man, we're giving you everything we can give you.
Yeah, exactly.
But, can we get sued?
All I can tell you is the first season of Road to Avonlea was so exciting. It was visually so stunningly
Great
beautiful.
series.
Rani
So
Ohashi.
how we got it, it was just brilliant.
No, Rani Ohashi was the cinematographer, the DOP, and he was amazing. And for the first time, they got the sound right. Because all those years of CBC and bad sound,
but they actually had good sound. They had amazing production values. Martha Mann, who did the costumes, oh, exquisite. It was such a privilege to be part of that first season.
Do you know why that all was? He said because it was a change in policy. The money previously had gone to film, and that all got screwed up with the tax shelter.
Yeah,
That all got fell apart in the early 80s. So they rethought it all. And it was no longer the Canadian Film Development Corporation. Guess what it became? Telefilm.
yeah,
Telly was first,
right,
and then came the broadcast fund.
yeah,
And guess who was right there at the door? A guy named Kevin Sullivan and a guy named Michael McMillan. And a guy named Robert Lantos.
yeah,
Alliance,
yeah,
Kevin Sullivan,
yeah,
Atlantis, all came out of that 1984 decision
yeah,
by the Liberals. We fucked it up with the tax shelter, so let's put the money into, which killed off the Canadian film,
industry,
period.
yeah,
Just killed it right then and there.
yeah,
And it took then the Adam Goins, the Bruce McDonalds, and the Denny Arpons to build it back up again, but that took about a decade.
yeah,
Because they had really, I'm sorry, this is an interview with Elva, but that's what happened.
Yeah.
And that's why Kevin was there, you know, at the right place at the right time. The same thing with Mike McMillan.
yeah,
You know, both of them were right there at the 1984 and 1985.
yeah,
And you were there at the right place at the right time. And I was there, but not necessarily at the right place at the right time. I was always at the fringe somewhere. But you were there at the
I'm
right
just
time.
a working
You
actor.
were working, but you chose to be that character. You played the mums.
Yeah,
I mean, I can't help but say this though, but you were a pretty young thing. You could have gone that star route, but you chose, it was either chose or it was just a career choice or whether it was just happenstance. But I know what happens because they like to get them when they're 19, 20, 21 years old,
right.
you know?
Yeah, and I didn't start doing film and TV
Until a bit
until I was in
later.
my 30s.
Well, exactly.
Part of what the decision that I made, I started to do I started to do a lot of commercials, right, on camera. And I knew that that had a shelf life. I knew it was only going to last for so long because you get overexposed. But I started to do a little bit of voice work and I thought, okay, this is more anonymous and it paid really, really well. Paid just as well as being principal
Yeah,
on
just
camera.
great. The same
Yeah.
way.
So my agency at the time, Laurie Rotenberg and Marvin Goldhar, Larry Goldhar, pardon me, not Marvin. Larry Goldhar ran an agency called Characters.
Yes, I remember characters, absolutely.
And Laurie and Sandy Sloan, who worked at Characters, were going to split off from Characters and they were going to start their own agency called the Talent Group.
Right. I
And
remember
so-
that as well.
I had started to book some voice work and they called me and they said, we're leaving Characters. We really want you to come with us. And I said, okay, that's great. This is what I want. I want to do voice work. Because advertising happens between the hours of 9 and 5 days a week. My kid is in school during that time. I'm a single mother. That really works for me. They said, absolutely,
Okay.
we will push you. In that, we made that promise, and they knew I was really good. I mean, at one point I was like one of the top 10 voiceovers in this country for, and most of the rest of them were men. So,
Right.
I did really, really well. And it was perfect for me. But what it meant was I was so busy doing voice, I couldn't do film and TV anymore. Because why would I do an audition? Like people, it's hard to get auditions. Half the time I would say, I can't, I have a voice booking. I can't audition because I have a voice booking that day, right? And so my film and TV agent completely lost interest in me because I was working
Right.
all the time in voice.
Okay.
So there was a kind of, long period there where that was my career, was doing voice work.
So how did you
But
manage to-
thank God I did, because that's my retirement. That's why I don't.
Did you have relatives to help out? Or
No.
any in-laws?
My mother lived in Barrie, And I had a very,
Boy, that must have
sadly,
been tough. That could have been.
Yeah. there was a period
Were
when.
you living downtown Toronto at that time?
Yeah, I mean, I bought my first house out of voice work when I was probably, Gemma was 12, so,
1980.
well, she was born in 68, so I bought my first house in 1980. And it was because of voice work. Up until then,
Oh, so even before you got your GD, even before after war, you were working full time,
yeah,
doing voice.
no, I was doing a lot of commercials
Okay.
on camera
Okay,
and doing a little bit of voice work.
all right.
But it was after that period that things started to break voice-wise, and I sort of pulled back on everything else.
So tell me about the split up in the marriage. Talk about the split up in the marriage, or just you just left it?
No, I mean, I got, I was a very, when you think about it, I went to theater school when I was 17. My husband was 5 years older than I was. He had traveled from Australia already to come to Canada. He was somebody who he was extremely extroverted. I was very introverted. He was someone who was happy making deals and being out there in the world and schmoozing and all of that stuff, which I never have had any interest in whatsoever. So he kind of took care of me. And I think the truth is that we were meant to be best friends. But I really depended on him. He was like, I don't know, the balance wasn't right because he felt differently than I did about the relationship. And yeah, so that
Well,
was.
just as a courageous decision again, emphasizing the time, 1970.
Yeah,
I mean, as much as there was a liberation going on.
but you also have to
And we were
remember.
living common law, and we didn't get married, and we were having
Yeah.
children out of wedlock and all that sort of stuff. Whereas suppose in my previous generation, my father was born out of wedlock, and he never talked about it.
No.
And I never found out about it until he died.
Yeah.
Right? Where my parentage is. So I understand that, but back to the point, they can't. Well, you said you had a house, so it can't be that you were financially strapped.
No, I was okay. I mean, but it took a little bit of building. I mean, after, to be alone with a child, and he went back to Australia.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even like I had the odd weekend off, I
Right.
mean, I got the whole brunt of it. Yeah, but it's also interesting
It's a
generation.
stubborn streak.
It's generational too, because
Maybe
my
it's that
grandmother.
Scottish stubborn streak.
Maybe. My grandmother was a single parent, my mother was a single parent, and I was a single parent.
So there you go.
So,
But your daughter has broken that.
yeah, my daughter
You have a
actually.
grandchild.
I have a grandchild, and my daughter, her marriage seems, they are each other's best friends.
Oh, there you go.
And I think they're very solid.
Before we wrap, and we've been at it for quite a while, so I would like to, but there's, touch back on the theater, because you said you've done a lot of theater, and you've done a lot of theater across the country, which is perfectly understandable, the way things work in this country. There is a note on your wiki page about something called bush ladies.
Oh, yeah.
And they say that one of your favorite was most notably Anne Langton.
Yeah.
Now tell me a bit about that. Can we conclude on that? Because that seems to be
There's a
something.
woman called Molly Tong, who, Susanna Moody, Catherine Partrail were sisters. Anne Langton was another figure, a pioneer woman who kept a diary.
And we're talking 19th century pioneer women in
Yeah.
what was called Upper Canada,
Exactly, and the fourth.
outside Toronto.
Yeah, and Anna Jameson was the other one, who was an upper class lady from Britain who came to Canada again, kept a diary. So Molly, who's done a lot of work with the alumni over the years, took all these diaries and kind of put them together and created a little pastiche of these bush ladies and their experiences in pioneer Canada. So this little tiny show, we did it initially, and we ended up doing it at the National Arts Center. We had a run at the Tarragon. We toured all over the place with it. And one way or another, I think the four of us spent almost 3 years of our lives
With a different
doing,
production.
yes, doing the Bush Ladies here, there, and everywhere.
Well, again, it's the sort of thing you learned in sort of graduate school in Canadian thinking lit. I mean, there
Yeah.
was stuff happening before, Margaret Atwood, and she
Yeah,
she wrote about that and she brought that out. That's very important. Which leads to another sort of more generalized question. Again, back to theater. You played a lot of roles, some of them classical, some of them contemporary. What's your favorite?
I love period work. Like I just did Mrs. Higgins in Pygmalion this summer, and I love putting on
The Maid.
no, not a
No,
maid,
the-
Mrs. Higgins,
Oh, no,
Professor Higgins' mother.
Oh, the mother, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was thinking in the movie she was the one who was the maid, but no, you're right.
Yeah.
Mrs. Higgins.
Yeah, no,
Yes,
she's wonderful.
right.
She's the one who,
Yeah.
she's
I'm sorry, my mistake. You actually.
Her
My mother
impossible-
would shoot me for that.
her impossible son,
Yes.
and she's very kind to Eliza and takes Eliza in when she breaks up.
She
off
has
with-
two big scenes, one on the racetrack and one at the end.
No, that's the movie, not the play.
Okay. I'm just so tuned into the movie. I granted, I probably have not seen the play.
Yeah,
I just-
yeah,
I
the play's
hope-
wonderful. The play is truly wonderful. Anyway, but I love to put on a long skirt. I love a wig. I just really enjoy, and I enjoy comedy as well. And I like words. I like literate text.
Right.
I really, really enjoy playing with words.
How's your memory?
Pretty good, but I work hard. But I always did.
That struck me, the one thing I could never accomplish being an actor.
Well, it's
Learn all that and then have it stuck in your head that you can pull it out. Christopher Plummer could pull out King Lear from, verse
Well,
to
yeah,
verse.
and I think that there are some people who are, really wonderful at learning lines.
Adapted, that's what it's
Yeah, but I mean, that classic, there's the two classic Canadian questions from audiences. One of them is, what do you do for a living? Because a lot of people assume that you can't be making a living doing this. And then the other one is, how do you learn all those lines? And, my answer has always been with great difficulty.
Yeah.
I work my ass off learning lines. I always have done.
And it seems to be a really difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
I think that's what put me off.
Yeah, it is difficult. I mean, to get to a point-
Not to read through the play, let alone remember the damn thing.
Well, but not only that, to get to a point where, it's so enmeshed that it seems effortless to get to that point.
Right.
As in most things, it's like the concert pianist who has to do technique over and over and over again, and finally can trust their technique and let it fly, right? But that work is the solid basis of what we do. And if you're not prepared to do that work,
Okay, well, I think on that note, we can say thank you very much.
Okay.
And thank you very much.
you're welcome.